So we're back here with Judge Thomas, the now everybody knows as the passionate, happy, completely energized, never jaded judge who got to witness all of life's dramas play out in your courtroom. By the way, how many years in the guardianship part did you sit?
10. I did 10 years in the guardianship part, and then I did 10 years in the JHO monitoring the guardianship part.
In your 30-year career, a piece of it in the criminal court, a piece of it in the civil court where I normally practice, and a really long, lengthy piece in the guardianship court where I think you see most of life's real inner work.
I've done it all. The only thing I didn't do, I'm happy to say, was I never did contested matrimonials, because those cases never end. They never end. They go on forever and ever and ever.
Yeah, you left that to my father, huh? That's
yeah. Your father has a fabulous temperament. I mean, he was cool. He was cool. I always liked your father. There was something really nice. And he always looked super young to me. When I saw him around, I was young again, because this guy, he never aged. He always was young with a big smile on his face. And your father, you want to do your father. He has some of the most fabulous stories in the world. I don't want to steal his thunder and take any of his stories, but he's got some good ones.
He does, but so I'm just going to ask you one question about my father. Since you're a judge, you've been able to be judges of lawyers, whether they're high quality, not so high quality, and all this. And you know my father, and you know me now a long time. So I just got to ask you, while we have it on film, who was the better lawyer, my father or me?
It's different type. You're not the same individual. Both of you are totally different. Okay. You cannot make a comparison between the two of you guys. Your style is different than his, totally.
All right. Have a great second career in politics, Judge. We're gonna
okay.
Wait.
Okay.
You're
the ultimate. You are the ultimate lawyer. Your father. There was something very, very kind about him. I don't know. Let's go on. Let's move on from that. Okay?
That's fine. Yeah, I was trying to get you to say something about my. That's okay. I know I'm not going to get there. But here let's ask you a different question, because you mentioned before, and I've been in front of you, so I know what it's like. I want to ask you about your court staff, because you mentioned one of your court staff, and I knew one of them, Josephine. So I don't know if you remember this. Let me tell you a little story about you. Let's see. I want you to remember. So I think it's got to be about 15 years ago, and even longer, where I had occasion to be in your part. Now, it would be rare for me, and you know that I'm a civil lawyer, and you don't really love that stuff, and you didn't sit in that part too long, so I didn't come in front of you. But I happened to have one case where a child was injured really, really severely and had a guardian appointed. It was his mother, and the case, was a very complex, case that went for a lot of money, but ultimately had to come in front of you to be approved, because you were the judge supervising the guardianship. So we as civil lawyers couldn't get a case for guardian approved for settlement without a judge like you reviewing it. So I had to come in front of you, and I knew who you were, and I knew your reputation, and I happened to know your two sons, who we'll talk about, who are very close friends. So I said, okay, I'm going to go in front of you. But I also knew that none of that's going to mean a thing coming in front of you, that I better be ready, and I better be prepared, and I better not mess around. So I went in front of you on this very important case, and I said, boy, this is real, very important, very complex. I'm not normally in the guardianship part, so I had to be extra prepared for questions you were going to get asked. And I walked into your courtroom, and there you are sitting on the bench. How tall are you?
6 feet.
Yeah. And when you're sitting on the bench, you look a lot bigger. You know that, right?
Okay.
You did.
All right.
You got a deep voice, and you got a very regal manner about you. You even have that now, even now that you're off the bench. And I went in there, and I got to tell you, I'm the son of a lawyer. I'm the grandson of a lawyer. And when I went in front of you, I was no baby lawyer. I'd been practicing long enough. I've been around. But boy, when I got in your part and saw you take the bench and start handling cases before mine, I was a little worried. A little intimidated. You're an intimidating guy. Anybody ever tell you that?
Yes. I've heard that, but I don't believe I'm intimidating. I'm just trying to do my job, and I try to treat people. Everybody gets treated the same way. That's all.
You know,
Uh,
and I could attest to that because I knew you knew who I was. You knew I was friends with your sons and this and that. I didn't get it. There wasn't even recognition from you on the bench that you knew who I was or anything like that. Nothing, not one thing, zero. You remember that?
yeah, I do. I wasn't going to play favorites. I do my job. I hang my prejudices before I come out in the courtroom, and that's about it. That's the way I handle things.
Well, I'll tell you what. So I only had one experience in front of me, and it was that one. And I don't know. I don't even know if you know this. I'll bet you don't know it. But that particular case, which that was a multi-million-dollar case. This was a really big, really complex case. A lot at stake for a lot of people. Very important for this child and his mother and everybody that was involved. It was a really big deal. There must have been, I don't know, 7 or 8 people in your courtroom when I handled that case and everything. And it was multiple appearances in front of you. But I'll bet you what you don't know. Behind the scenes, the case blew up. There were problems on the case that aren't that interesting for this call. But a problem arose, and it got very, very heated and very ugly. And you know how that problem got solved? Your law clerk, Josephine, in the hallway, took all the lawyers that were fighting. I was one of them. Everybody out in the hallway in a stairwell outside your courtroom on a day where the case was supposed to get called. And had the case gotten called in front of you, there was going to be a very ugly, very public fight that really might have had some serious consequences to my client and to his mother and to other people. And I was prepared for that fight. Now, you didn't know it at the time. The case hadn't been called. Your law clerk, Josephine, pulled us aside in the hallway, all the lawyers, really in the stairwell. And all of the problems got ironed out by her in the hallway. That surprised you?
Not in the least.
Why would
Josephine made me look good. Josephine was the best. Josephine, one of the most brilliant lawyers that I ever came across in my entire career. She was great. I was really fond of Josephine. She was 1,000,000% loyal to me, and she was brilliant. She knew how to handle people. She was, not everybody liked Josephine because she was all business all the time. But she knew her business, and she knew it well. Unfortunately, she passed away about 4, 5, 6 years ago, too young, and we were very close. She became part of the family. I lucked out. I hired her when I was elected. Before I even took the bench, she was a referral to me from Judge Bambrick, who was moving from the civil court to the Supreme Court. And he didn't want to take it to Supreme Court. And I used to always remind him, his name was Gene Bambrick, nice guy. Gene, you did me the biggest favor. You made the biggest mistake of your life when you got rid of Josephine. But you did me the biggest favor. And yeah, she was good. I was lucky. I had a wonderful staff. My secretary, Rita, she's still over there right now. She's with another judge. And I do it. How about the court personnel I had? I lucked out with the clerks. I had the best clerks. I had John Barry in the criminal court. I had Linda O'Connor. I mean, with the main names, they were good. Pam, they knew what they were doing, and they stuck with me. What can I say? I looked out. I was delighted with it was a wonderful working environment that I had with these people. So
let me ask you a question. Most people, I think a lot of lawyers, and certainly clients and lay people, when they go to court, they think, well, it's the judge, and the judge does everything, and it's the judge and the judge and the judge. Now, I know a little differently because my father was a lawyer for a long time, and his father was a lawyer for a long time. So I was kind of taught a little differently, that it's not just the judge. And that sounds kind of like what you're telling me. How important is it for you in your role to have all these people around you?
I couldn't do it without them. A good law secretary is, it makes your day. She would leave me with a lot of the nonsense that goes on. She knew how to screen people. And she would conference cases and come. By the time they got to me, it was just like, all I had to do was to rubber stamp it sometimes. So the court personnel, they can make or break the judge, by the way. If you don't get along with your staff, you could have troubles. You could have troubles.
I can
I know a particular situation of a judge who couldn't get along with his staff, and they didn't like him. I'm not going to mention his name. That wouldn't be fair. They knew his character. One day, one of his clerk took a quarter and crazy glued it to the front to the floor in front of the courtroom. And so he walked out. And he wanted to pick it up. He couldn't do it, and he had it. It was like
Wait a minute. He glued the quarter to the floor?
yeah, it was crazy glue,
Okay. All right.
and they couldn't get it up. And so they were laughing. This was like a big joke. Yeah, they fooled around with him. Then
Funny. Let me ask.
Anyway.
Let me ask a different question about
Yeah.
who you rely on now. So I know, and you just how much you guys rely on your court clerk, your court staff.
Yeah.
I mean, it's integral for any judge. We just know this. If you've been practicing, you know this. Now, but in the news in the last year or so, there's been a lot of news about a Supreme Court justice, Judge Thomas, and his wife. You seen any of this stuff?
Yeah, sure. I've been following it.
So here's a question, and and I know your lovely wife, and how much you relied on her. And you even said it when we were first talking earlier today, how she was sort of an inspiration for you to get on the bench. So there were times when you went home, and by the way, 100%, my wife knows every case that I have, every report. There's not even a question. And I run questions by her all the time. What do you think about this? What do you think about this? And she's an amazing sounding board, very influential on the decisions I make. Do judges do the same thing?
I did not share my experiences with my wife. She wasn't interested, really. I mean, maybe she was, but I didn't push it. So we talked about other things for us. When I didn't bring it home with me. If that's what you want to know. That was the good thing about being a judge, which was not the good thing about being a lawyer. When I was a lawyer, I brought it home. I practiced law for 22 years, whatever came through the door. And in fact, I certainly talked it up. But when you walked out of the courtroom at night, you shut the door. I'm on a different plane. I'm in a different dimension.
I'm impressed that you were able to do that. I think that's hard to do.
As a lawyer, it was hard to do. As a lawyer, you wake up in the middle of the night writing notes to yourself with thoughts, things that you should have done or didn't do, whatever. It's always a struggle. But in the judge, it's not that at all. You close the door, you're gone.
So you slept like a baby when you were a judge.
Absolutely. I certainly did.
Maybe that had a lot to do with the spouse that you had. That's what I'm thinking.
Well, I know your spouse. She's a wonderful woman, and in your situation, it works very well. My wife, we didn't talk about them. If there was nothing really interesting, I would mention it, but there was, that was not something which she was waiting for me to relate my day.
I'm impressed.